Welcome back, everybody, to the Teen Titans retrospective. We're going through every episode of the original Teen Titans, so make sure you subscribe and hit the bell if you don't want to miss out. Let's get into X-Force. I don't know. Season 3, Episode 2, X, written by David Slack and directed by Ben Jones. So this episode is one of the most infamous for introducing one of the long-standing, unresolved mysteries of Teen Titans. However, plot-wise, it's actually fairly simple. We open with the Titans chasing a villain who has stolen some stuff. When the Titans finally get close enough to confront this person, we see that it is Red X. But what? I thought Robin was Red X. Who is this person? That's the big mystery. So briefly to recap part of the story from Season 1, the Titans were dealing with Slade, and in the episode Masks, Robin went undercover as this new persona, Red X, in order to try to infiltrate Slade's operation and learn more about him in order to defeat him. But once that ultimately failed, Robin retired this alter ego and hasn't used it since. So now, someone brand new has taken up the Red X mantle. We get a brief action sequence of Red X defeating the Titans using his many different Red X themed gadgets. And then we get a scene of Robin returning to Titan's Tower where he had the Red X suit and equipment sealed away, and we confirm that it was in fact stolen. So someone, we don't know who, stole the Red X suit and all the associated gadgets and equipment and is just going around and using it to steal stuff. The thing that's interesting about this episode, and that fans really held on to, is that we never find out who this new Red X is. He's never unmasked. The show ended before ever revealing who that was, if they were ever planning on doing that in the first place. And so it became one of the big unanswered mysteries of Teen Titans. Now, many fans, of course, want to know who this guy is. Fair enough. You're presented with this mystery and then we just don't get a resolution on it. But at the same time, I think because we don't get a resolution, that's part of the reason that this episode and this concept is so engaging, because it's just an open-ended question. You're only left to endlessly speculate. If they gave us a definitive answer of who this guy is, I don't think it would be as interesting of a question of who the fuck is this guy? Even though I too have wondered for many years who Red X is, and would be very interested to find out if they, for some reason, decided to reveal that in some type of sequel series or another season or whatever. Not that we're ever going to get that. I would be interested to find out. At the same time, I think the mystery of who he is being an open-ended thing kind of makes it more intriguing. And it kind of fits in thematically with some of the concepts of this episode. Throughout the episode, we get some narration from Robin. He's brooding, he's pondering who this guy is. He's blaming himself, partly because it was a persona that he came up with. He invented all these crazy gadgets that Red X can use, and now it's technology that he helped design and build that someone else is using to do crimes. So now Robin feels partly responsible for this new Red X's escapades. Or excapades. I'm sorry. I'll stop. Anyways, through a lot of this narration, Robin is debating what the nature of good and evil is. He's it's supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be straightforward. If there's a bad guy, you stop him. And that's the end of it. But I was almost that same bad guy, so there's some weird stuff there. And then ultimately at the end of this episode, Red X ends up helping them defeat this other criminal organization, which I'll get to in a minute. And then Red X gets away. And we don't get any answers of who he was. We don't get any answers of why he helped them, why he decided to help them when there was no personal reason for him to do so. He seemed to just decide. We don't know what his motivations of that were. It's a true anti-hero character where his motivations and morality is questionable and somewhere between a simple hero and villain. So Robin's just like left questioning what even is good and evil. Is there a clear line between the two, or is it more of a blur? And then we just kind of like are left with like, well, I don't know. Sometimes there aren't easy answers. And that's kind of, I think, partly why Red X like resonates with people. Is like, sometimes there aren't easy answers. Sometimes there isn't a Scooby-Doo mask reveal and it's like, oh, of course it was that guy all along. Sometimes we just don't know who does stuff. And sometimes we never find out why. Sometimes life be like that. And that's interesting, because then you're just left wondering, you're just left questioning. But on the other side of that whole question, who is Red X? Are there any clues and are there any theories of like who this guy could be? Well, yes, Beast Boy, in fact, has a whole conspiracy board of a variety of different theories, which are all very funny and interesting. I'll go through them quickly here. His theories include a version of Robin from the future, and we see a picture of Nightwing, some type of interdimensional imp, and we see a picture of Larry. I like that we're hinting at other versions of Robin that we already know do exist, and that we've seen like from other episodes, because Red X does seem to have some connection to Robin. Possibly, like for example, he sounds the same as he did in the previous episode. He's still being voiced by Scott Menville, who of course also voices Robin.
X marks the spot.
Which obviously suggests that there could be some connection between him and Robin. Of course, there could very easily be some type of technology that he's using to like alter his voice as well. So I don't know. Beast Boy also suggests that he's possibly a clone, some type of evil twin, maybe a long-lost brother of Robin, and then the picture that is shown is clearly modeled after Scott Menville, the voice actor, which I think is a fun little Easter egg. The theory that Beast Boy ultimately settles on is a bionic monkey that's infused with Robin's DNA, which is obviously pretty credible. But the other theory that is of note and is like latched onto by a lot of fans is Jason Todd, which is really interesting for a number of reasons. First of all, this is mostly just an Easter egg. Beast Boy's going through various other Robins. Jason Todd was another Robin, so he's on the board. But to comic fans, this is like kind of a big deal that Jason Todd exists somewhere in the Teen Titans universe, or at least Beast Boy seems to think he does. Jason Todd, of course, was the second Robin. Dick Grayson was the first. He left to join the Teen Titans. Then Jason Todd became Robin. He was killed by the Joker. And then much later on, he was brought back as the Red Hood, a sort of anti-hero character who was an antagonist to Batman, but then eventually he kind of joined forces with him. It's a whole thing. But there are obvious parallels between Jason Todd Red Hood and Red X. Of course, we got the red motif going on. This could be an interesting variation on that storyline. Apparently, Jason Todd did exist at some point in the Teen Titans universe, so what happened to him? Unclear. Is he dead? Is he missing? We don't know. We just know that apparently he exists. And we have seen in other stuff like Arkham Knight, spoilers, although everyone on Earth and their mother guessed this twist, the Arkham Knight ends up being Jason Todd as well. So we know that in the DC multiverse there are versions of Jason Todd that have become other characters, not just Red Hood. And Red X being like a sort of darker alternate persona of Robin, that would fit with Jason Todd as sort of a darker take on Robin as a concept. The other thing that I think gives Jason Todd some credibility in the theories of who Red X could be is that like we get very little information about Red X in this episode, but he does seem to have like knowledge of the Titans, Robin, and Red X, because he knew to go to Titan's Tower to steal the Red X equipment in order to use it. So that's interesting. Does that mean that he knew that Robin was Red X at one point and had that equipment at the Titan's Tower? Did he have some prior knowledge of who Robin was? Him being Jason Todd could potentially explain those things. We also see that like he's very skilled, and not just in using these various gadgets. He definitely has a bunch of combat training, and he seems to have like arguably similar training to Robin. There's a moment towards the end of the episode where they even like team up and fight together, and they're using some of the same moves. So if Jason Todd was Red X, that could explain why he knows how to fight in a similar manner to Robin. This is all theoretical, of course, is because we ultimately don't really know anything about Red X. There are other things that potentially contradict this. Like, for example, Red X calls Robin Kid throughout this episode, implying that he's older than Robin, which Jason Todd is usually younger than Dick Grayson, and we do know that this is Dick Grayson Robin from previous episodes like the Nightwing episode and such. But again, because we don't know anything about Jason Todd in this universe, he could have been Robin before Dick Grayson, so maybe he could have been older. He could just be calling him kid to like throw him off. Any number of reasons he calls him that, we don't know. That's the whole mystery. On the complete other side of things, I think it's just as likely that he's just a random guy who's good at stealing stuff. Later on in the episode, Robin confronts this other villain named Professor Chang. Not that one.
Professor Ben Chang?
No, you're a teacher, you're not a professor.
Maybe because I don't look like Ron Weasley.
Played by James Hong. Wonderful character actor. He's in Everything Everywhere All at Once. He's in Big Trouble in Little China. He's the duck in Kung Fu Panda. He's in a billion things, and he's great. He's always wonderful to hear. He has a very distinct voice, and he's fun here. But this guy is this like mad scientist character who is involved in dealing with, what's it called? Xenothium, which is this made-up substance that Red X uses to power his suit and use all the different gadgets. Robin was associated with this guy in order to get his hands on Xenothium in the first place, which is like a very vague substance that can be used for all kinds of stuff, which is an excuse to give us like just a wide variety of gadgets that Red X uses. Sometimes it'll shoot a laser, sometimes it'll be all gooey. It's kind of whatever it needs to be in the moment. But anyways, this guy is involved in, I guess, mining this substance and knows about it and knows that Robin used it to power Red X stuff. So maybe the new Red X just like became associated with Professor Chang somehow and found out about Xenothium through him and found out about the Red X suit through that, and then robbed it from the Titan's Tower. Maybe he's just a very good thief, as he explains that he is, and like broke into Titan's Tower and stole some shit, and it turned out to be this Red X suit, and he's like, cool, I'm gonna use this now, this is my gimmick now. That's sort of the whole thing, is like, we don't know. So briefly, the plot: Robin interrogates Professor Chang to try to find out more about Red X. He doesn't know, but is involved in mining Xenothium and trying to create a big doomsday laser to destroy the whole town. Eventually, Robin does capture Red X, but he's like, I'm going to go stop Professor Chang from blowing up the city now, and then I'm going to put you in jail. It's too bad that you only care about yourself, because it would be nice if you helped us defeat this guy. Robin goes and fights the bad guys. Eventually Red X does show up and help. Oh, and he does say something about like, just because I don't like being a hero doesn't mean I don't know how. So that's interesting, because that could also refer to Jason Todd. Maybe he's talking about, in the past I used to be a hero, but now I'm not. But again, we don't know enough to confirm that. And then Red X helps him defeat the bad guy, but then ultimately gets away. And that's basically it. So like, the story of this episode is mostly fairly simple, but there's a lot of interesting questions about this mysterious anti-hero character. And on some level, it's maybe not that deep, because it's just like, whoa, a guy who's not fully good or evil, how complicated and interesting. It's like, yeah, it's an anti-hero. We've seen them in many things before. But I like how it's done in this show specifically, because to these characters, things usually are very black and white and very simple. There's a good guy and there's a bad guy, and we are the good guys and we stop the bad guys, and that's the show. And most episodes, like, that's true. But here we have a bad guy who's like just self-serving, not like malicious. He just likes stealing shit, and then he ends up helping to save the city in the end. So like, why did he choose to do that? We don't know. You throw an anti-hero into like an established, very like black and white, good guy, bad guy world, and it like opens up so much more like possibilities for themes and characters and stuff. It makes characters question what they thought they knew about the world, and I think that's cool and interesting. And, you know, fits into the world of Teen Titans. They're learning that the world is more complicated than they thought. They're coming of age, they're growing up, and they come across this guy who they can't quite peg. They can't quite figure out, is he good or is he bad? We don't know. We don't even know who he is, and we're left without any clear answers. Also very similar to a lot of the stuff they did with Tara in the previous season, although Tara I think is a lot... Well, Tara we get a lot more time with, so she's a lot more fleshed out and a lot more deep of a character. But we're playing with similar concepts of like, what is good and evil? What is redeemable? Does someone who does something bad make them bad forever? If somebody does something good one time, does that make them instantly redeemable? It makes Robin question his like very simple worldview, and that's interesting. And the fact that we never get a clear answer to some of these questions is also interesting. It leaves it up to the viewer to wonder about like what is good or evil, and to wonder, who the fuck is this guy? Which, you know, keeps you coming back. Like, yeah, who the fuck was that? We may never know. A couple other quick Easter eggs. At one point, they're fighting on the rooftop of a building with the word Soto on it, which is a reference to Alex Soto, one of the show's creators. We saw a similar building in a previous episode. I think it was the one with Blackfire, but I'll double check. So that's just a little fun Easter egg. I was like little references to the creators of the show. The other thing that is interesting, because we haven't gotten to the episode that establishes this yet, but in the background of one of the scenes, we see one of the little slug guys that are the larva form of Killer Moth's moth creatures that's just like hanging out at Titan's tower. This is a thing that'll come back later on in an episode where they established this. But this is Silky. He's a former moth creature who becomes the Titan's pet, who they kept from that episode. I don't remember when they established that, but it's a few episodes. It's later on in this season, I think. But it's interesting that we see Silky before they establish that he exists. I don't know. We'll get to it when we get to it. But that's about it for this episode. Ultimately, it's a good one, and it's one that's like very fondly remembered because of this mystery that they set up and never gets resolved. What do you think? What are your Red X theories? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out, because we're going through every episode of the original Teen Titans week by week, episode by episode. So I will see you next week with another episode. Bye-bye.